Hello and welcome, friends, to one more session of NITCO Talks. Today, once again, we have fantastic ultra luxe designers, starting with Anjali Goyal of La Sorogika from Delhi. I've seen her place in Noida. It's absolutely amazing. She's there. Hi, Anjali, and welcome.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Abhishek Mathur from Studio HBA, part of Harsh Bredner, based out of, he's based in Mumbai, but the company is headquartered out of Singapore and LA. Kaif Faki and Associates. I knew even his father, Mr. Faki, very well. So known them a very long time. And Zaki Sheikh, Parthenon Architects, all amazing ultra luxury designers. Welcome all of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
First question to Zaki. What do you think is luxury design? What is your impression of luxury design?
So, as far as I'm concerned, luxury means different thing to different people. But for me, luxury is those small things in life which are not absolutely necessary, but without it, life would not be comfortable or as pleasurable or as beautiful. So that for me is what luxury is. So luxury is just not about just think it's about the experience. For example, for an architect, for me, luxury is about exploring new ideas, new thoughts, new processes, going down the unbeaten path, being able to come up with innovative stuff. So luxury should not just be just seen to what things are, but also what things have not been and what things can be in life. So that for me is luxury.
What would you say, Anjali?
See, for me, as I am a luxury designer and Aubert Luxe is my forte. So for me, I think luxury is something which is very aspirational. What we call luxury is what we don't get so easily in our lives. So as a designer, I try to create that dream that I think any person, human being wishes to have in their life and aspires to. So something a little, I would say, out of the ordinary for me is luxury. Something which one doesn't really experience, but dreams to experience. So for me, luxury means giving them that experience which they dreamt of. That's what I think is luxury for me.
Many of us can only dream about it.
No, you're there to fulfill it. I'm there to fulfill that.
Vivek Talwar lives it.
Kaif, what is your idea of luxury? You have to unmute before you talk.
So, for me, I was thinking about this that, the topic was about sustainable luxury. For me, luxury actually defines a state of mind of a person. It's more about what is the state of mind that you wish to be in your life, what you can afford to be in your life, and everything that you do actually, circumferences around that state of mind. Whether you want cognitive ease, you want some sense of corporal ease. So to me, that is one very important aspect of life. And the other one is, to me, one I've observed in clients, that, and which is common knowledge, I suppose, that image perception is also a very important aspect of luxury. The deep-rooted desire that we all have, we must admit it, of being socially distinguished. We want to form an identity, and that identity comes from luxury. So in that sense, these two aspects of what it ought to be and what it is observed is my definition.
Great. Abhishek's firm has been specializing in hospitality and luxurious hospitality. Abhishek, what is your idea of luxury?
Well, I think there's not much left to say. I think after all our friends have already described what luxury means, I couldn't agree more with most of them. For me, luxury is generally defined as something which is a desire, a pleasure that cannot be uh, obtained just like that. It's obtained rarely and usually at a cost. And generally, it applies to things which seem non-essential, but we derive a lot of comfort and a lot of fulfillment from this idea of luxury. I think the conventional understanding of luxury for most people comes from the origin of the word, which is luxus, which means in excess. So in excess of something is generally sort of, the origin of what luxury means. And the opposite would be, so I think instead of, now excess of what is the question. And to me, increasingly, at least in our work, it seems that um, the excess of not something material but more immaterial things, the excess of having time, the excess of having a sense of quality, the excess of having loved ones around you is what true luxury is to the discerning travelers now, at least in the hospitality industry. And I think it may be a good point for us to continue our discussion with.
Our topic today is responsible luxury. What do you consider, what is sustainable luxury? What can we do to make luxury sustainable, responsible? Who would go first in this? Zaki?
So your 2 points were what is sustainable luxury and how do we make luxury more? So just can you go back to that? You had 2 points to that.
I said our topic is responsible luxury, and I'm saying how do we make luxury sustainable or responsible?
So there are 2-3 different parameters that I would judge sustainable luxury with. So the first parameter I would judge sustainable luxury with is a lot of people are looking at luxury or the materials that are being used. What is the carbon footprint to it? What does it do to Mother Earth? What is the condition that is mined in or it's gotten to us? What it does to the people who are in the supply chain of it, who are the people who are responsibly sourcing it, what it will do to the workers who are implementing it. So this is what has been sustainable luxury in the term of the normal term. But I think I'm putting this COVID thing in it right now because I think life has changed dramatically to what COVID has happened and things have gone. I think another thing for responsible luxury would be pricing going forward, because money is also going to be a very can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, because it just said it's unstable connection. So it's also going to be do with money. So going forward, sustainability also will not just mean to material to cost. It will also mean to cost. It will also mean to, because across industry, it could be hospitality, it could be architecture, it could be interiors, it could be even the ultra luxury are going to feel the pinch of money. So it's going to mean about how you're going to be sustaining your architecture with the design process, with the materials that you have there, and in a particular price point that you would want to be able to make it. Yes, there will be always some people whom price will not be a factor too, but there are a lot of people who will have a pricing as a main factor also going forward. So I think responsible or sustainable luxury will encompass the entire spectrum of stuff, right from the design part of it to the material part of it and to the cost part of it.
What do you feel, Anjali? What is sustainable luxury? What is your impression? What do you think is sustainable luxury? And what can we do to make luxury responsible?
See, for me, because I'm a manufacturer, I produce luxurious furniture, interior items. I mean, everything to do with luxury in lifestyle is what we produce. And for me, not from today, but from the last few years, I think it's very, very important to be responsible for the environment, for whatever we are doing. So it's not just our lifestyle, but even the kind of work that we are doing. So we are constantly working on materials which are environment friendly, which are sustainable, whether it's the wood that we use. So instead of wood, we're using a lot of man-made materials. We're trying to go away from the natural things. And there's some great development world over which is being used by our company, as well as I think even the paints, the fumes that we use, and not only is it for Mother Earth, but I think even for our workers who work in the factories, it's very important when we produce luxury items. Is very what we focus greatly is on the human labor that is using those products and how it affects their health. So I think for anybody in the luxury segment must understand that apart from giving luxury to the user, the process in which we attain that objective, we have to ensure that the workforce itself is getting all its safety measures, all its masks, and all the fumigation, which is health for health. As going forward, I think health becomes the first and foremost thing for the entire world. So I think immunities and the health and safety, the gear that the workers are wearing to create the luxury that we are able to afford to give to our customers, I think we as owners and as designers, I think hold complete responsibility to ensure that the workforce that goes into making this is completely safe in every way possible, from the materials that they use to the methods that they use, and also to make the environment conducive for them with the summer coming in or the winter in the North India. So I think all these things become a big responsibility for the luxury makers of this country. And I would address it this way.
Great. Kev, what do you say?
See, I'm going to take up on you that it's a balancing act between health and wealth. It's going to be the case in the future. I mean, the whole drumbeat of sustainability, the whole rhetoric of it has come from the fact that you have an ecological crisis, the world over. In some very distant sense, even the one that we're in right now has some implications of an ecological outcome of people spreading across the world. So in that sense, we must address all the aspects of climate change, resource depletion, responsible usage of resources, ocean acidification, waste, and all of these things. Now, how do you do that from your general way of working, which actually, to be honest, in our day-to-day life doesn't address it so much in the projects that we do. So one of the thoughts that could be possible is that we focus on responsible and sustainable production, my co-panelists have described many ways of doing that, and of course also responsible and sustainable consumption. So how we consume also, what we use in our projects in that sense also. So I think it's a ethical examination of material choices. So we have to kind of filter our material choices through an ethical examination. And I think that's the way to go about sustaining, to make a sustainable luxury.
Great. Abhishek.
Yes, I think, again, I fully agree with what Kev has pointed out, and I would take it a notch further. I would say that, sometimes this argument gets a little bit heavy on the ethical front, where, of course, we all want to sort of be sustainable and right on the ethical side of things, but I think the challenge always is how to sell it as a response to a luxury product, right? Because the expectations of our clients, of our guests in hospitality industry is that how do they get like an elevated sort of an experience while doing all the things that we are just talking about. So I think that's where the design community has to really step up and take that challenge. Whereas we are concerned, I think in our projects, through our work, we are definitely trying to engage um, with communities, with teams of experts, and we recognize that as our works, which are generally hotels or hospitality related projects, they are about teamwork, and we try to engage with the right people, we try to engage with the right communities to make sure that we are not building just islands of excellence, but leaving a larger legacy for for the people who are the stakeholders. And for them, we've seen that having this sense of a larger perspective creates in their mind um, uh, the idea of luxury, that this is something that they are able to do which nobody else can. I mean, it's easy to build um, like a hotel or a property which does not really respond to its context, but it is harder to engage with your neighbors, engage with the community at large, to create something which is very beautiful but at the same time beneficial to the larger community. And I think this is where we as designers must devote more time and really sort of open up that dialogue between everyone.
Abhishek, well, hospitality, the hotels that you design are semi-public. As Anjali said, she designs luxurious projects that everybody dreams about. How do we, and most of the people can't afford it, it's not affordable. How would we let the public enjoy luxury? How do we get, how does the general public get to enjoy luxury? Would it be by way of public projects or public locations? Zaki, what do you say?
So I think the public has already started enjoying some parts of luxury. So for example, if you go to a multiplex today, or if you go to like a shopping center today, which is an all-inclusive part, it's just not something only for the rich or for the poor. Everybody can go in there, kind of stuff. So the public has started to get some part of it, but unfortunately, yet it is a private enterprise that's doing it. It's not the public enterprise, because I think the government of India, unfortunately, has much more priorities right now than to try. And it's right now we're in the stage in a country where we're trying to make sure that things come to the common man. We've not been able to reach a point where we can make it luxurious for the common man, because it's very nice for the design industry to think that we can sit on and think that luxury should be there, definitive luxury should be there. But I think the rest of the country is suffering. The common man is looking to get a square meal, and not COVID times, pre-COVID times also, like their middle class families, etc. So to get public to get into the government to be able to get into the luxury field, I think we are a very it's a fantasy according to me right now, because I think we're about 20-25 years away from being able to get luxury into our common spaces, into our gardens, into our subway system. I was doing another talk where we spoke about the subway system. Our subway system is just it's a functional subway system. It's not an aesthetic system. It's not a luxury system, because our country has different needs right now. So I think we are some distance away from realizing that dream. I would love to know what the other people in the panel think about it, but that's my personal belief.
Kev, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I was feeling that, I've been listening to Zaki, I was feeling that, yes, we are exactly what he says, where we are at, as a country. What we could also do is that, first assess that, okay, what's the experience currently of the mass, all our fellow Indians, what is the experience currently exists, and make that as a benchmark. Okay, this is where how we experience public travel today, or this is the amount of spaces that a city and urban fabric allows for leisure, and then say that, okay, if I raise the bar from this level, I am actually providing luxury when I am seeing things from that level. So one constructive approach could be that, yes, I mean, one can't become like a first world developed country so soon, but wherever we are, at least we engage the design community, and this goes out to the government and the corporates that engage the design community, because I think the design community can really offer a lot from where the current standards are.
Anjali, we all travel to the first world on holidays, we travel for work, and generally wherever we go, public spaces, maybe whether they're gardens or whether they're museums or whether they're maybe like if you go to New York, we're at the Rockefeller Center, there is a central area there. Most of these places are all quite luxuriously done. So it gives us the opportunity, it gives public there an opportunity to go and enjoy those spaces. How far is India away from all this? So that public at large gets to enjoy it. So even though they can't personally afford it, but at least go out for an outing and enjoy it on weekends or whenever they like, whenever they want to.
Yeah, so Vivek, here I think if we compare ourselves to the first world, then maybe we're very far behind. But if we compare ourselves from where we were to where we are, I think I've been working in India very closely, and I've been working even in the second cities very closely. And I'm in this for the last 35 years of development. I personally see a lot of growth happening, and maybe not from the government side, but the private developers in all urban areas, in second cities and third cities as well. So there, I think there's a huge focus, I would say, on design and on upgrading and the experience for the common man. So if you look at the common areas nowadays, whether it's the gardens or whether it's even the malls or even the theaters, there is some kind of luxury that is being provided to the common man, which he might not have access to in his own home. So he, to some extent, yes. And I think, the kind of projects I am involved in right now, I think we're heading for some very beautiful experiences and some huge luxury experiences, even coming in from the temples, from these, they're trying to make monuments now with the government right now. So they're trying to make these really spectacular, world-class, like we have an Akshardham in Delhi, which is an absolute experience, I would say. And, even if you see their fountains that they've developed, and if you see the whole experience of watching a movie, of course, you can't compare it to like the Disney World of LA. But if I would compare it to something from India, from what it was to where we're heading, and I'm also doing some other very unique projects by some private developers, which are targeted to be giving the experience to the most common man. So I think each person in his own capacity, whatever he can do, he is trying to make a little bit a notch above where we are. So luxury is going up step by step, even in India. So if I compare it to how India used to be, let's say 15, 20 years back, I think we are heading for some very beautiful spaces being designed by. And I think India, I can truly boast that India has some great talent in design, and some very unique and very luxurious and very interesting public spaces are being developed. Maybe at a slow pace, because I think the government has huge responsibilities otherwise. But we are headed in a good direction, I would say. Yes.
May I request you all to be on mute when the others are talking, because I think there is a data issue. Sometimes you're not able to hear all correctly. Somebody clearly. Abhishek, as I said, you already do luxurious semi-public hospitality project. It's not open to everybody to come in. So what do you think can happen? How do we work to giving the public at large luxurious spaces to chill in?
Sorry, Mr. Talwar, I think I'm losing you. Hello?
Yeah. if I can request the others to be on mute, because sometimes it causes a disturbance.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Talwar. It seems like the.
Can you hear me, Abhishek?
I can barely hear you, but I think it's better now. If I understand the question correctly, you were asking me to my response on
Yes.
how luxury can be part of the public domain. Is that the
Yes.
question?
Yes. 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 Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
We can hear you, Abhishek.
Oh, okay. Okay, sorry. I think my screen just seems to be frozen, so I wasn't sure. But let me respond to that. I think, look, as designers, we have to understand that, when we talk about public domain, our, uh, our sphere of influence is much smaller than we would like to have. So I think if at all luxury needs to be part of the public domain, then it first needs to start from policy making decision to be taken by state governments and and beyond. But I think as design as a design fraternity, what we need to do is to create the right aspirational model. I think this is where the choices that we make in terms of uh, the kinds of things that we were talking about, like how do we choose our materials, how do we choose the partners whom to work with, what is the kind of design aesthetic that we make an impact with in project, how we try to incorporate a larger vision for project creates it as part of a community development. I think that would be one way to sort of engage the idea of luxury with the public at large.
Okay.
Can I say something in this?
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
I think I'm taking from Abhishek and I'm from KEF. So basically, I understand that everything has to do with regulation because the country has much more things to do than just accept design. I think to go forward, first we have to look back in our past. I think India has some of the best luxurious things ever made in the world. Look at our forts, our palaces, our historical things that we have. So if we first restore them to a certain acceptability levels, which the rest of the world, the common man can first experience that. Right now we're experiencing things in ruins. We are experiencing things without toilets, without access roads to go there. So first to go forward, let's look at the back, where we've come from. Let's try and see, because these are easier fixes for the government to do. It's not easy for everybody to make an airport. I think the Bombay airport is fantastic, or the Delhi airport is fantastic. But maybe 10% of Indian population flies. Do you know that kind of data? 90% of Indians have not flown. So they do not understand how innovative, how beautiful is the Delhi airport, the Bombay airport, etc. So we need to start more at grassroots levels, because you were talking about America and Rockefeller Center. So you will have a place like a Powai that you did a fantastic presentation at last time, because that is fantastic as a development. The common man can go there. You have DLF in Delhi where you can go there. You have places in Chennai where the common man can go there. These promenades that can go there. But that is yet a public, that's yet a private enterprise. And like the Rockefeller Center or America is a 200-year-old country. We're a 70-year-old country. So our problems are different. For us to be able to reach the common man, I think we will, as I said, we start from the past, then we see how policy decisions happen, how things go forward. And India has probably one of the best designed people in the world, but unfortunately our government does not make much use of them. That's, that's a discussion I was having with KF yesterday about something. So, if collectively people yet need to start loving design. The common man yet doesn't love design because he doesn't know the difference between survival and understanding what luxury design means. So I think, again, as I go back, we are like 25 years away, but maybe our children will be in India where design will be a part of everyday aspect for the public spaces, at least.
No, that's true. Zaki, do you think that designers can influence each other to practice sustainable luxury?
Absolutely. I think the biggest influencers in the world for the architecture, the design industry is each other, because we always look at each other, emulate what are the best ideas that they have. Design is not by looking at other people, by understanding what they're doing, getting to understand what are their strengths. It's not plagiarism, because every design is basically based on an idea which somebody has and taken forward. So 110%, I think that everybody, for example, this panel can make the second person a better designer, as far as just not luxury design or sustainable design, any kind of design. So, and I think our community, the Indian design community, is like another community that I've ever seen in my life. I think the Indian design community helps each other, helps, explains to each other. You see the kind of bondness that the Indian design community has across fields, across fashion, across architectural design, interior design. I think it is one of the most innovative industries. Besides being innovative, it is one of the most helpful industries, which each other as companions or as people or people who are part of the industry. So yes, we are influencing people right now, and we will continue influencing each other for a very long time to come.
Anjali, as you were saying that you haven't really been connecting with the design community, and you were happy that this initiative was doing that. How would you think that you'd be able to continue to communicate, to interact with the design community that would allow you and others to influence each other on the luxury, on sustainable luxury or responsible luxury?
Yes, as I was telling you that I think what's really important, like I complimented you for this program also, is I think the interaction between all of us. And sometimes we all get lost in our own words, but we are all doing a lot at our own level. So I think when we are all meeting up, talking to each other, each has a great influence. All of us have one kind of canvas, a similar kind of canvas, let me say, and we all are doing our own thing. So I'm sure each other's experience is going to be highly beneficial. It will be highly beneficial if we interact more and more as much as we can, and where we can exchange ideas. Like even for now, I think I've learned so many new things just in this little time that we've chatted with each other. So this one-to-one interaction, and like how we just mentioned, is that it's this community is very helpful. I mean, I would say we're just all friends. So when we meet, I don't think we meet as competitors ever. So I think this industry, and I think we all hold huge responsibility to share our views and our responsibilities and experiences on how we can help and improve and go ahead together, hand in hand.
True.
And take this responsibility jointly.
Great. Kev, you generally don't get onto webinars. You are generally aloof, and you think that how would it work? How would you influence others, or how would you allow others to influence you with sustainable luxury? I was Ankur was telling us that that I'm surprised that Kev is on your webinar. He says no to everybody. So we were obliged that you were on our webinar.
No. I mean, it's more of it. It's a fault of mine. It's not that I'm saying that I shouldn't be. I should be actually, and I would like to be also in the future. So having said that, I mean, as Anjali just said, and even Zaki mentioned, it's a tight-knit community. There's a very good comfort and vibe in how we exchange things. So many of we colleagues call each other, when we have something to bounce off. So there is an informal network, and this is what I think helps. But further on formal platforms like this, where there's actually a good discussion, the takeaways are also very good. So I would definitely say that this is for me a way forward. But at least a few months back, I had visited Anjali's factory. We saw some great stuff, and we really liked some of the finishes and things that she does, and we found that we could work together. So there are opportunities also when we communicate.
Yes, yes, yes. Abhishek, what do you say? How do we connect and how do we influence each other? You'll have to unmute. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. No, I think again, like with all the other questions, I fully agree with all the panelists. I think these are the kind of interactions which sort of enrich what we do, and I'm always looking forward to learning something new. And who better to learn from than our own fraternity, especially with people who have lots more experience, lots more projects, lots more interactions, and it's a new day every day. So I really look forward to these interactions. I wish there would be more. And at this juncture, I must thank you for this initiative. It helps me to acquaint myself with more peers, and I'm definitely looking forward to discovering more.
Okay, now I'm giving you the question first, Abhishek, so
Sure.
that you don't have an opportunity to agree with anybody. Give the others the opportunity to agree with you. Do you believe that luxury should be compromised for sustainability?
Well, I think we need to define.
Or, sorry, or vice versa?
No, I don't see them as sort of opposites. I think there is definitely a sphere where both can coexist. And as a designer, I think this is what we love to do: give us some impossible tasks, and they seem at loggerheads, frankly, sustainability and luxury, but they are not. I think that's what we've established in the last 40 minutes. And I would pose this question differently. I think the question more so is, how do we do it? How do we make that possible? And I think that's a dream for all of us, to kind of get the perfect balance. But I think I can talk from my personal viewpoint of working on many projects and with the hospitality industry. A lot of our projects consume enormous amount of energy, and the operators that we work with and the clients that we work with have associated costs to this. And we work always to, while we are building something which may be termed as a luxury property, I can tell you behind the scenes, and I think, Mr. Talwar, you would be aware, how the budgeting happens, how the cost cutting happens, and what research and revisions we have to make that aspiration of luxury fit into a sustainable budget, and from where we are concerned as designers, in a sustainable outreach to a larger objective. And this is something that we have to take up. But I don't see them as opposites.
To you, Anjali, again, do you believe the luxury should be compromised for sustainability or vice versa? You'll have to unmute, Anjali. Thank you.
So according to me, I think we don't really need to, if we're conscious about sustainability. We're of course conscious about luxury. That's what we're creating. That's our foremost in our head. But if sustainability is our responsibilities, I would say, it coexists very beautifully. And as Abhishek said, that these are two things that can go hand in hand. What's important is for us to get the formula right, is how to make it work perfectly. Where we attain luxury, we attain whatever we want to attain as luxury, keeping in mind sustainability and ensuring that everything that we are doing is environment friendly and sustainable, and we are able to create our benchmark as we want to do it, with sustainability following hand in hand with us. I think that should not be any problem. And we don't need to compromise either for either. So I think it is not something which is like, they're not two different things. They're not opposites. It's not that because you want to attain luxury that sustainability should be compromised or the other way around. I don't see it that way.
In fact, somebody just posed that question, that is not this a paradox, sustainable luxury?
It's not. It's not. It just sounds like a paradox. You created it like that, and I think the whole world, I would say, you know, who are creating luxury. I mean, you're part of that whole team of people. I think all of us are very conscious of the first thing when someone shows a product to me, I think he talks about sustainability that's the first thing he does for marketing his product to us. And I think that gives him one mark more, you know. So I mean, all different aspects of creating luxury, I think we do have it now. We are very extremely conscious and responsible towards the subject of sustainability while creating our luxurious projects.
I think Zaki has something to say because he was sitting up to answer something.
No. I basically now, since I'm the last one to go, I think Abhishek and Anjali have kind of touched on all the points. It's my turn to say that. So while on that, I think as designers, I don't think anything is challenging enough and I've never thought when somebody's asked us to look at luxury and sustainability, we had to choose either, because you can marry both of them. And in our experience, whenever we've married both of them, the end results have been great. So everything has to do with the same basic materials. It's about how you are able to sustain those materials, how you be able to use those materials, how you be able to use it innovatively. Isn't that what luxury is about? Like how to make a differential factor from using similar kind of stuff to be able to make it into a niche which is different. That's what luxury is about, right? So it's not like saying that it's going to be a contradiction or these words do not meet. I think these words meet very nicely if the design industry knows what they're doing. And I think most people in the industry here know what they're doing. So I don't think this is a fallacy or a contradiction or a play with words.
Zaki, would you be able to give some examples of how you've implemented this in your projects, in your works?
Sorry, I didn't hear you. Can you come back
Would
again?
you be able to give some examples of what you have done to this?
I'll start with something as basic in this, right? There's been constant innovation. And as long as you keep up with constant innovation, you know, there's one of the simplest things that I always talk to people about is like, you know, we used to make brick walls once upon a time. Now we make Ciporex walls. So that's better for the environment. We used to do cement plastering on that. Cement plastering has depleted our riverbanks, has made things, you know, environmentally has been bad. So now you're something like a gyplast material. I'm talking something as simple as rudimentary as that. Why is it luxury? Because maybe it's 3 to 10% more expensive than what the traditional technology was. But does it bring a huge benefit to the environment? And this I'm talking about a basic material. Like that, there'll be ends of for every single material that you can talk about. Let's talk about plywood and wood. Let's talk about, so for every single thing, there are different alternatives that are there. It's right there, it's on our faces, we need to see them. And the difference between them is not high. Is, for example, how you mine your stones. The difference between mining your stones is not very large from doing maybe a Satvario kind of a marble to like a Sicilia kind of a marble. So it depends upon us, how are we using our brains, our innovation that we bring to the table, and how we can do it. I just told you 2 very basic items in life. I'll give you another one. Laminate. You know, we spoke about this in like a week ago somewhere. We were talking about it. Is that you have such innovative laminates that are available. Pinakin was talking about it. And if you know how to use laminate innovatively, technically properly, where the edges are not shown, where the quality of it is, you know, where the limitations of laminate which are there, which you can erase from the design part of it or the aesthetic part of it. The price point of it is cheaper. The sustainability of it is cheaper than real wood. So it basically goes on us as architects or designers, how extra mile that you're wanting to follow in your design and your ideas and your beliefs.
So Vivek, I had a point here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So one of the things that, you know, one way also to, you know, kind of marry sustainability and luxury is in a recent project what we are doing. It's a Lux estate for a client is that we actually told the client that let's design the project on the concept of biophilia. Biophilia, just for the audience in general, would be the idea that you are actually someone who has an extreme passion for nature. It's not just that okay, I love nature in the outdoors, but actually an extreme passion for nature. So you actually tell the client and you design with the client, and the perception of the project is that yes, my passion for nature is what I need to bring out in the design of this luxurious estate. So that itself takes you in the direction of marrying sustainability and luxury, and rather than them being in conflict.
Now coming to looking after health and safety of labor, especially during current times. I mean, how can we do it? I mean, how do we look after the health and safety of labor during these times? What do you think we should be doing? Maybe I can let Kaif answer that.
See, to me, I mean, I had a, I would say that we need to improve the conditions of work for the people who actually materialize these projects for us. The down at the grassroots level, and one of the ways of doing that is very simply is moving the work, much of the work off the site. And we are still in a era in India especially, and in a tradition where we are constantly hustling bustling on sites. The world has moved far ahead. We need to put things back into factories, into production units. We need to follow a system where we produce outside and install on the site. This also gives you better working conditions in the factory. Better safety standards can be applied in the factories, in the production areas, rather than on sites where it is a little difficult to control. So we need to move from site in intensivity to, perhaps we can say, production and installation. That's pretty much the direction which is highly lagging, I would say, in India. Highly.
Zaki, what do you feel?
I completely agree with Kaif, and I think Anjali does something like this, and I think Abhishek's most of his projects work would be happening in the same way, where it's built somewhere off-site and it gets installed on site, etc. I think as a country we really need to go there. I think it's every architect's desire to do that, but for us to be able to do that, we have to go downstream and make sure our offices are better equipped, our designers are better equipped, our workers are better equipped. But since we've digressed from this topic, going back to a topic where we were talking about looking after labor, etc. We are not project managers, so we don't really get into how labor is managed and how laborers get looked after at site. But something very small came to my mind during this COVID time. We have a insurance policy that we regulate to every client, to every vendor, that there should be an insurance policy for the labor. We came to realize that these insurance policies are just a namesake. They do not really look after. They only look after in the case of an accident. In any other scenarios, there nothing that labor gets helped by. We've been seeing what has been happening to labor in the last 1 month. We've all been horrified by it. So I think the project managers, especially, whose core competence is to look after project management and project execution, they really, I think so, going forward, because I think work will happen and stop and disrupt and start happen again. I think so for the next 6 to 8 months, we need to better come up with a better safety policy or a better policy ideas for the labor that we have. And maybe insurance companies need to be more ideated towards how things are going to work in the future. So this is just one point that I could think of for a person who's just not even in the project management industry at all. So maybe Kaif would have some more ideas, because I think he's a resident expert on these things.
I mean, as I said, I feel that we need to overhaul everything. Our own staff safety, as you said, the safety of the working conditions on site. And one good point which you brought up, Zaki, is that maybe some insurance companies actually come up with a package of safety which is catered to only this industry. As you said, if they can be, they can be hedged, the workers, for any crisis, then that would be a good, good, safety net for them. So in some ways, processes as well as industries need to be insured also. Both of these need to work together. What do you feel, Anjali? What is your introduction?
Yeah, so I think for me, I'm heading this kind. We do projects. I run a fit out company as well, and we are working globally. I mean, we do projects all over the world. In fact, we do some of the more luxurious projects in the world actually happening. And to let you know that it's entirely done by 70% is Indian labor that we're using, which is which we are using not only in India but world over. So what you are Kef, you're asking for, or Zaki feels is lacking, is what we've, like, since I'm in this line for the last 35 years, I also saw this. I was struggling with this whole situation on site, and our sites and we as designers were helpless because we were not controlling anything. So we now, that is exactly what we do. We have our own labor camp. So it's not about labor's health and safety on site. It's also about giving them the right conditions to live otherwise. So what you do is you take care of their fooding, you take care of their living. And that is the only way to be able to ensure that you have good quality labor. You have the right quantity of labor to finish a project on time. And we take complete responsibility for fooding, health, safety, and residence for all of the labor. So if I have 5 nationality laborers working, we have 5 different kinds of cooks working and feeding them as well. And then for our sites, we work like how it's work, like we have a health and safety manager. There is safety shoes. Their dresses are there, uniforms are given to them. We ensure that they have fans and good quality drinking water on sites. So this becomes a very big responsibility for us as we at the project. We are the fit out team. So since I run it, so I really know, and I also run a factory which I manufacture, which also has about 500 people working with us. So we are extremely conscious of the health conditions that are given and provided to them. And I think that's one of the reasons of our success, is that we are able to, because I always felt that Indians are the ones who worked all over the world. I mean, most of Dubai and most of the Middle East has been built by the Indians. But the same Indian labor is not able to perform to its optimum in India. So this is
so if I may, Mr. Talwar, I think
yes, because I was going to ask you, because you are the international figure over here. So
no, I think just to add to what Anjali is saying, I think one of the things that I personally feel, this may not be everyone's opinion, but I personally feel that there are 2 things about this. I think because of the pandemic, we are currently looking for a response of how to deal with the current situation. And then I think there is also an idea about what is the long-term strategy that one must take for the construction industry in the country. And my personal opinion for the long term, I think the panel has very succinctly described what needs to be done now, right, to control the situation, to make sure that everyone is in good health. But I think the long-term strategy for me would be a shift gradually from unskilled to skilled labor, and I think that may answer Anjali's dilemma of why suddenly the same workforce that goes to the foreign shores, why do we have a different result, or when they work in offsites, but when they come back to India, suddenly the shoulders droop, and somehow we don't get the same results. And I think that may have to do with the fact that largely in India, I mean, we all have to accept it, there's a huge amount of unskilled labor. even child labor and, all kinds of things still happening. And I think we must get sort of that out of the way before we can start thinking of, how to get it more specialized, more curated. The manufacturing units across the world that I have seen always have people who may be good with, building stuff and doing things, but there is certainly a difference between a foreman in Italy and a foreman at site in India. And, you know, we just have to accept that. I think it doesn't mean that unskilled labor is bad, but I think then we need to plan for a longer strategy, how to make that move. And the sooner we make it, the sooner the industry is going to benefit from that move. So it's a bit more, the problem is more endemic, I think.
We have our friend dear Iram in the house, and she has a question. Would we let her into the room to ask the question?
Rahul, just let Iram Sultan in, please.
Question actually. Hi, Zach.
Iram, I'm not answering any questions.
Come on, Zach. I have a very simple one for you. And actually, I love, hi Kev, we've never met. I'm friends with Ankur. I was actually very intrigued by a conversation about biophilia, and I wanted you and Zaki to talk about interspecies design, because there's so much work being done with biophilia and interspecies design. So I wanted to know if you guys would, can you hear me?
You're breaking up
Sorry,
a bit.
I was
Clear. You're not so clear.
Okay, Anika, I will repeat this, but I had put this in the chat as well. I just wanted to ask you guys about your thoughts on interspecies design. Is that the way to go? Is that going to be a very important design development in the future? Since, I'm taking off from Kev talking about biophilia.
Yeah, see, it is a direction. We are, I think there's a convergence with happening a lot in the cutting edge section of design. That there's a shift now from, I would say, materiality to experience, and biophilia is actually very much part of that shift. That what we are perhaps a bit off track in our way of living. We are a bit overstretched. So to me, biophilia is almost like a response of your innate nature, as a human being from thousands of years. So it's almost like a response, and it is an urban response. Whether interspecies design works, or pulling out some things, like, for example, we're working on a Japanese wood burning technique, to create panels for a project. And that essentially came from a study of Japanese temples, and the fact that that process doesn't use chemicals, and at the same time waterproofs the wood. So my direction was more towards this, that there is an urban response to revive a different form of living. That's what I'm talking about.
Thank you. And Zach?
Yes, Iram, you're breaking up. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Very well.
Thank you. Zaki, I would love to know what your definition of luxury is, because I think it's very interesting. We are all in this luxury segment, and we all define it differently, and yet we have commonalities. That was my first question. And then, of course, what I was talking about with Kev, if you would like to take that further.
So I think Kev spoke pretty well on that subject. I'll first start with your first one.
Thank you.
I think, as I said at the start, I think luxury is different things to different people, right? It's about vision, it's about thought process, it's about how to be able to stretch that to the thought to the maximum before it can bring. So luxury will mean a different thing to a middle class man, will mean a different thing to an architect, will mean a different thing to an Uber rich. So it's all our different perception of luxury. So I think we should all be able to take back to us for what luxury is to that individual, because the same thing what luxury means, it's a very broad perspective term. It can't be applied to all. So if you ask me,
Sorry, I'm going to just add to this. So basically, if I understand correctly, and I agree with you, it is going to be your economic status to a certain extent that will define your notion of luxury, correct?
yes.
That's what you're saying. So then luxury becomes a more fluid term in today's day and age. Is that what we are all, arriving at?
I'm absolutely have been of this belief always, Iram, that luxury is a very fluid term to very different people. And
Sure.
I think it is not upon us as architects or designers or anybody for the matter of fact to define what luxury is, because luxury will mean very different. Of the 50 people that you know, Iram, every 50 people will define luxury differently. So luxury is just not about a brand or a name or fancy stuff. It's about how how things can be perceived. It's just not about
Right.
purchasing power. It's about a lifestyle. It's about how comfortable are you with something, right? So it's a fluid thing, and I think it will continue being fluid to different people.
I don't think Abhishek agrees with you. I'm looking at his face. Hey, Abhishek, how are you?
Oh, hey, hi, Iram. Sorry, that's
Hi.
just my resting face, huh? You should know better
Okay.
by now.
No,
Um,
listen, no, this resting face is a really tricky term. I've heard this resting face, including from Zaki. That's not fair.
Oh, is that so?
Zaki's resting hair these days. It's delightful, Zach.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Abhishek,
Abhishek,
So,
you were saying.
sure. No, so since you sort of, I got pulled into the conversation because of my face, I'll just add in a few 2 cents of mine. Um, I think, I was thinking about this as the forum went on, and I was jotting down like, what does luxury uh, and what could it be defined as? And I had earlier spoken about like how the general term of this means actually, something in excess. But today, for me, what is important is uh, luxury of time, right? Luxury of having a larger vision than whatever has been just given to us as a brief from our stakeholders. The luxury of research and working with experts. There's the luxury of believing in an authentic identity for the Indian design community. I think this would be a really great luxury to have for all of us, that we take some time, we take our resources off from whatever it is that we do from our day-to-day work, and sort of start thinking cohesively about where we are at right now and where do we want to go. This country, unlike the rest of the Western world, never has like truly had periods of surplus where we've had time to think about what direction we can take. In the Western world, when there's a modern movement, the modern movement transcends art, architecture, music, literature, everything, right? But if you see,
Sorry. I'm going to interrupt you there because I don't agree with you, because there is a very strong movement in design and art in the modern world. There's a whole modernist and contemporary. Zaki, stop laughing at me. Okay, Mr. Talwar, Abhishek, I'll call you later to have this chat with you, because Zaki started laughing. It's not going to work well, but so good to see you guys.
No. So,
Talwar, thank you.
Iram, why don't you ask Abhishek about biophilia? What is his idea about it?
I was not talking about biophilia. I was taking it one step ahead and talking about Neri Oxman's interspecies design. Never mind. I'll call Abhishek. He's my friend. I'll call him on my own.
Okay.
related,
Mr. Talwar, just mute Zaki and me. I promise you'll be happier. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
ciao.
Okay, so moving on to another question that we have from the audience. Sustainable products come out of innovation, and it might cost higher than that of a conventional one that we've been using so far as designers. Should we negotiate with end consumers for the justification of the price hike, or do we prefer to go with the conventional product so as to avoid complications? Also, this could be a brand specific development. So do designers have that liberty to use a unique product, or do we tend to use products which are available with one or more manufacturers?
Now, I can comment on the first part of the question, which is it's not necessarily true, that the innovative product may be, on the higher cost index. There is also the aspect of a life cycle cost, as we know, all of us know as designers actually. So to answer to this person's question, sometimes you may have a higher capital cost, but you may end up having a lower life cycle cost. So which is the cheaper option. So you have several innovative ideas coming out now, which are actually sustainable and also better on price point, whether being it the capital cost or whether being it a life cycle cost.
Okay, thank you. So another question we have is sustainable luxury just a paradox and most of the people are looking into luxury brands blindly? Should it be the people or rather the brands that need to take up sustainability?
Let's answer that. So for this, I would just say that I don't think the client or the user can take responsibility of sustainability. I think it's the producer who actually takes, it's his responsibility to see sustainability as a product that he is going to be offering to the market. Well, I think what most people who are actually buying the product don't really know the processes or even the details that have gone into making the products. So the luxury products, I would say it's the producer who needs to look into the sustainability part of that product.
So I think it's the specifier / architect / project manager and the manufacturer are the only two people who need to look into that, because I don't think it's fair. As she says that is that the client can never know anything. That's the reason they've hired the project manager, the architect, who in turn has recommended the manufacturer.
Okay. Another question is, while designing luxury residential projects, we need to include expensive Italian furniture and expensive marble? Or do you think that can we avoid this and still have a glamorous outcome?
So I'll take that first. I think it's just a thought process that we need Italian furniture or we need Italian marble. Vivek Talwar, all apologies to you on this one. Before that, it's about again, as I said, it's about being innovative. It's about how you can make stuff. I also think that one of the things this COVID has taught us is the dependence on your own country and not outsiders. So as much as we can make to produce in India, which we are doing, for example, like Anjali speaking, she makes furniture and she makes and Kaif is looking at Anjali to have some furniture made, etc. I think a lot of impetus is going to be given on made to India furniture, and I think Indian furniture can be as good or as talented or as aesthetical as we can try to make it to be. Yes, unfortunately there's some lines of design that the Indian designer or the Indian manufacturer doesn't understand, but I think it's about the learning curve. Once you learn it, I think we can adapt to it and we can able to do it. And why see, marble is stone. Any stone is a stone, right? I've seen some great projects which are made with Indian stone or with Vietnamese stone or like Vivek must be selling stones of different 25, 50, maybe. How many different companies do you sell of stones of, Vivek? 50 countries, 100 countries?
Yeah, easily 50 to 100 countries.
Yes, so it doesn't need to be Italian. Unfortunately, India is not blessed with large side stones. That's the only reason we have to get stone into India. Vivek is an authority, who can tell you about it, but it doesn't need to be Italian. You can get really cheap, innovative stuff. It is upon us how to innovate and use it better.
Yeah, I agree with you that there is no substitute for imported stone.
Yes, so there's unfortunately, because stone is not, Indian stone is not very large, but you can get stone from 50 different countries. It doesn't need to be Italian. And that necessarily doesn't mean that it needs to be expensive.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll just take the last question for our panelists. Can you all advise on how we can add luxury elements to commercial projects? For example, would it be like a food court, a cafeteria, or what else can we add?
Kev, would you take that?
Sure. So I'm going to, if you remember, part of the discussion is what Abhishek said, the luxury of time. If you're planning an office project, why not give a certain lounge to the staff, where they can actually, take time off, chill a bit, have off-the-cuff conversations. Why not bring a little bit of hospitality into office projects? Why not create a little more an edge of hospitality in actually a regular working environment? So that brings in a little bit of luxury in terms of food and service and all. That's I'm giving ground ideas. I'm not giving something extremely complex. And then one more direction could also be the luxury of space, which with a country with such a high dense population like India, if you can better plan your projects, create more space per person. There have been several occasions where clients have remarked that people come in and say that this is a more spacious, luxurious project, and the two words are used to spacious and luxurious. So these are some of the I would say the base tricks of doing it. What do you think, Abhishek?
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and that's such a refreshing thought, in my opinion, Kev. For me, I was just thinking about a couple of experiences. Although we don't do a lot of office design, but I've been in a lot of offices for meetings, and I often, I often wonder when I wait for the clients to come in a meeting room, I can judge like whether they have a sense of the kind of luxury that exists in our mind as hospitality designers or not. For example, a lot of times you walk into an office and somebody comes in, an office boy asks you for a tea or a coffee, and then there are times when there is a very warm person who comes in, and there is a coffee machine right next to the little console inside a meeting room, and then they pour you your espresso, whatever, say hi, chit chat a little bit. To me, I mean, that is amazing. That is warmth, that is hospitality, which doesn't cost a lot. It doesn't matter on the floor what material was there. Three gifts of hospitality are like a smile, a hug, and some food or something to drink or eat. I think as soon as you sort of create that experience or design spaces in a way that those experiences are created, materials are immaterial in a way. I think it's totally up to you. It doesn't take much to make people happy, and feel nice or sexy or luxurious. I think I think somebody put it quite succinctly earlier. It's a state of mind, and as designers, we must see like how to create that. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to leave the thought for all of you that how do we carry on this conversation? I mean, we've met, we've discussed, we've enjoyed the conversation. Everybody has loved to hear all of you. And how does this carry on, on an ongoing basis so that there is some kind of a frequency, a place where one meets and chats? Do you think it's always going to be on Zoom?
Hope not. I hope we're going to meet more often now, soon.
I'm sorry, but I just wanted to catch up on, I'm going to be the next caller on whatever panel Iram is on.
Who am I? And I think I should make this speaker the moderator.
Right? Maybe, I think maybe Zaki and I should team up and be the only callers on that next panel.
I'm going to connect off you on this offline, Abhishek. I think I'm going to do that for sure.
The forums that we have enjoyed being in is dialogues with Sanjay Puri host. It gives us, to meet up with 40, 50 designers or work on vacation, which we did last time in Istanbul. But those are once a year things or twice a year things. More often, when there's some kind of a group where we know that Anjali is in town, so let's just get together, or Zaki's in Delhi and get together.
That'll be really nice. I love that.
Designers tend to try and call up people and try and meet up often. I think some of my closest friends are design people. And for example, I think in this COVID times, I think I must have spent, I'm not exaggerating, spent 30% of my time talking to design people. And not as rivals or something. It's just about knowledge sharing, about being camaraderie, etc. So I think the design industry will find its own ways to meet people up, and I think if you offer them a drink, it'll be even faster.
Well, I'll be happy. I'll be happy to host.
Zaki.
Yeah.
I said I got the message loud and clear.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be happy to be the pivotal person in Mumbai to host everybody whenever you guys are in town, so that we can catch up, because all are friends. So I can be the pivotal person.
I
I
absolutely
can
agree.
be the Delhi one, huh? My drinks, the bar's open all the time. Okay, Zaki?
Absolutely. I'm the one who doesn't really keep in touch, so I will make sure that I keep in touch more often. And like Kef is next level, but I will try and make sure that I keep in touch at least.
Zaki, you miss coming to Alibag, you miss coming to my house.
I know I'm not very social that way, I agree.
It's
But
selectively social.
I'm scared of Anika, so yes, and I'm selectively social. I don't know where do you learn all these words, Anika.
Your Instagram page.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, all of you. Zaki, anything?
Thank you for connecting to all of you all.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks, Vivek.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much for coming on. It was fun.
Seeing
And
you,
really,
Abhishek, again, and Kev.
Yeah, absolutely.
much.
My
Yeah,
pleasure.
and
Why
looking
keep messaging
forward
on the
to
page
seeing you
saying
very
that-
soon now.
Yes,
And
thank
stay in touch, everyone.
Yeah, if your wife is messaging that your wife covers for everyone,
yeah.
which I probably guess is true.
Very true.
Okay, bye
thank
guys.
you, everybody. Thank
Alright.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.